Okay, everybody. We're going to start to talk about World War II a bit, and as I mentioned before, it's not my favorite way to do this. I like to introduce it with something fun or something interesting, but so be it. We do have some interactive things that we're going to do as we go along. It's just, I have to modify things to kind of deal with the limitations of remote learning. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the U.S. in World War II. The United States, much like World War I, did not want anything to do with World War II. In World War I, it was Woodrow Wilson who pushed us to stay out, but also the public, a lot of the immigrants who had moved here were, really interested in keeping the United States out of the war. In World War II, it's the same deal, except that people had kind of seen this before, and so really weren't all that interested in getting involved in another war in Europe. To that end, not only did we claim neutrality, we passed some laws during the war to try to keep us neutral. The Neutrality Acts of 35 and 37, and these are before the war starts. The war doesn't start till 39 when Germany attacks Poland, but in the meantime, the United States kind of sees the clouds of war gathering. And so we pass these acts that say, listen, we are not going to trade things to belligerent nations. Okay, um, Americans are not allowed to travel on belligerent ships, and no belligerents are allowed loans in the United States. The idea is let's keep the United States out of this in any way. The goal here is to prevent Britain from engaging in submarine warfare, or not Britain, sorry, Germany. If the United States is not trading with Britain, there is no reason for Germany to engage in submarine warfare. And we're just really trying to avoid a Groundhog Day like effect where we're right back in a new war, not really much more than 20 years after the previous World War. FDR, though, is not a person who likes to sit on the sidelines. We know he's not laissez-faire. The New Deal was anything but laissez-faire. It was government, laying a heavy hand on business and on things going on in the country. Well, FDR was not really all about neutrality. FDR was friendly with the British government, especially their Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, and he wanted the United States in the war. So he had to balance that with the United States public's opinion, knowing that they didn't want in. And so he did some things to push us away from neutrality. He began doing something called cash and carry. And right away, we can see here that this is something that's going to benefit the British and anger the Germans. And basically, it says, listen, if you can come and get weapons from the United States, you can buy them. We know from what we learned previously that Britain can come and get them because they have a really good navy, that Germany cannot come and get them because Britain has a really good navy, that this is going to anger Germany, and Germany's going to feel the need to use submarines to balance that power. He then put something in called Lend-Lease, which now, not only are we not doing cash and carry, meaning you have to pay for it and then take it, now we have a situation where we're lending equipment to anyone who could come pick it up, knowing that it's only the British who are going to be able to do that. We loan the Allied nations destroyers, and he begins funneling money and weapons to the Allied nations. The Allied nations being the major ones, being France, who was conquered relatively early in the war, Britain, Russia. Those are the main Allied nations. Yes, Belgium is an ally, in Denmark and Poland and other small nations, but those are the big nations. The thing that really pushed it over the top and allowed the United States to join the war was the attack on Pearl Harbor. Let's go forward and come back. Okay. In our handy-dandy map of the Pacific here, all right, we can see that Japan is located here where the cursor is circling. Pearl Harbor is located over here in Hawaii. Now, why would the Japanese attack us? Because this is kind of a thing. At the time when this happened, people in the United States had no idea why the Japanese would attack us. But the Japanese are bent on dominating the entire Asian theater and the entire Pacific Rim. They wanted control of all of this. And the only thing really standing in their way is the United States fleet at Pearl Harbor, the United States fleet in the Philippines, and the United States presence in general. And so the Japanese come up with this audacious plan to secretly let their fleet sail off of the coast of Japan, disappear. It arrives at Pearl Harbor. We're caught completely by surprise, and a good portion of our fleet is destroyed in Pearl Harbor. We're going to watch some videos about it and see some things about it as we go along here. Good for us, or good luck for us, our aircraft carrier fleet had actually left Pearl Harbor right before this happened on some maneuvers. They were not destroyed. But most of our warships, our destroyers, our frigates, our gunships are destroyed in Pearl Harbor, along with killing many soldiers. There's another reason that the Japanese aren't real happy with us. If you look at Japan, it's an island chain. It's an island nation, much like the Philippines are, Indonesia, lots of the Asian countries are. Japan is a volcanic island chain. And the problem with that is they lack natural resources. They don't have oil. They don't have enough coal. They don't have definitely steel. They don't have the ability to make steel, and they've been making steel out of scrap that they purchased from the United States. They've also been buying lots of other raw materials from the United States. But as Japan gets aggressive, attacks and controls the Koreas, takes over large chunks of China, eventually takes over lots of different islands in the Pacific, the United States decides to quit selling them the materials they need to make war because they're beginning to attack our allies. They're beginning to do things that we disagree with. So let's go back here a little bit. Too far back. Okay. Japan wanted to control the Pacific. The U.S. fleet stands in our way. The Japanese angry for us cutting off supplies, so they decided to attack. That's all something you could stop the video at any time and take these notes. I'm going to move forward to keep the video shortish. Okay. And we could kind of see the war here. What happens is, not only do they attack us at Pearl Harbor, they also attack us and boot us off the Philippines. And they go on this campaign of attacking the United States or our allies all over the Pacific. And you could see here the different dates where we had to come back and fight. We'll talk about that in something called island hopping as we go along. This is actually a photo of one of our warships. This is the USS Arizona. It was blown up. It turned upside down, and it still leaks oil into Pearl Harbor. There are dead U.S. Navy soldiers still in the boat. They're interred here. That's where they come. If you ever visit Pearl Harbor, you could take this shuttle. It brings you out here, and you could walk across here. There's a memorial to the Marines. Now, Hitler was not good with this. Hitler had gone out of his way to keep the United States out of the war. He was furious. The Japanese had promised not to attack the United States. They had lied to Hitler. He did not want us in the war because he knew that we could turn the balance of power. The war was going very well for Germany, and the United States entering was something that he found less than optimal. And it turns out that he was right. Our fleet is so badly damaged and we're so dinged up in the Pacific that we really go off now to fight in Europe against the Germans. And, you know, I've talked about this before in class, but I want to talk about it one last time. And it's the title of this PowerPoint. You know, why has the United States fared so well in world wars and other conflicts? Other people have smart generals. Yes, we have good generals, but they have good generals too. The Japanese and the Germans fought very hard. Their men are not cowardly. They're not incapable of putting up a good fight. These are solid individuals. But what really makes the difference is the United States has the ability to produce things at a level that the rest of the world just cannot keep up with. And our military might really kicks in. And it's something they've actually been talking about recently because they were looking at President Trump to invoke a law from World War II that basically allows him to tell companies what to make. Now, in this case, he wanted them to make ventilators, masks, personal protective equipment. But back then, they were looking at obviously making things for the tools of war, and they shut down auto plants and told them to make tanks instead. As a matter of fact, you cannot buy a 1943 or 44 Chevrolet or Ford. They don't exist. They were not allowed to make cars. Instead, they were producing for the war effort. The War Production Board, which is the title of the bullet here, was unbelievably successful. Um, And here we have the bullet about no cars, but no new things that weren't essential. It's funny that we see that word coming up today. You know, we're in a crisis, and World War II was considered a crisis in America that everybody had to kick in and do their part. Businesses were told what to produce, but the truth is they made very good profits. The government paid well for the items that they produced. You could count on getting paid. You never got stiffed, and so it was ended up being very profitable for most of our companies. Oh, all right. And that's where we'll end it today. Take the notes, pause the PowerPoint when you need to take the notes, and we'll be good from there. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. I hope you're all doing okay. And I will talk back at you soon.